This is John Sobieski Stuart, and this is Charles Edward Stuart, the grandsons of Charles Edward Stuart, aka Bonnie Prince Charlie. Forgotten heirs to the Stuart dynasty, sons of a prince spirited away to protect his safety. Or so they said. The pair were actually a couple of con artists whose work was described by one historian as shot through with pure fantasy and barefaced forgery. But they got their hooks into some pretty powerful people who were just itching to buy into their Jacobite fever dreams. They would go on to give themselves titles, hold court in the Highlands, and influence the revival of Highland culture. Maybe even the tartan you're wearing today. Welcome to Scotland Unplugged and the story of the Sobieski Stuarts and the Great Tartan Con. This is the V&A in Dundee, and this is the Visterium Scoticum, produced by John Sobieski Stuart in 1842. He claimed it dated back to a 1571 book handed down to him. It contains detailed prints of tartans, all of them invented, but that didn't stop the tartan industry adopting them. I mean, all tartans are invented, but these didn't have the heritage John claimed they did. Much like the man himself. The brothers were born John Carter Allen and Charles Manning Allen at the turn of the 18th and 19th centuries, possibly in Glamorgan in Oxfordshire. Their history goes dark for a while, but court records show their father was actually in a debtor's prison. Not the best start in life. At some point, the brothers moved to Scotland, changed their names, converted to Catholicism, and began living their best lives with other people's cash. The tale they wove was one of injustice, a legacy thwarted. They claimed their father, Thomas Allen, had been brought to Britain as a baby by their grandfather, John Carter Allen, an admiral in the Royal Navy. Their father, they said, had been adopted, and he was actually the legitimate son of the real Charles Edward Stuart, him off the shortbread tins, and Princess Louise of Stolberg-Gedern. The story went that he'd been sent away to avoid assassination or kidnapping. They published poetry, short stories, and in 1842, John published his Visterium Scoticum. The pair followed it up in 1844. Expanding on their subject and costume of the clans, and claiming that the clans had all had tartans associated with them through history, which just isn't true. Not everyone was impressed with them though. Walter Scott called them men of warm imaginations when the supposed manuscript surfaced in 1829. Then, in 1846, they published Tales of the Century. In the book, they told the story of the Red Eagle, a fictional heir to the Stuart dynasty. Wink wink, nudge nudge. They describe a Dr. Beaton being called to a mysterious birth in Italy, and a room filled with paintings of the Stuarts. The same doctor then sees a baby taken onto a ship by a Commodore O'Halloran, who they were sort of suggesting was really Admiral Allen. They were projecting their own supposed story in their novels, hinting, laying out the claim they used on their benefactors, and they had some powerful ones. This is Francis Stuart, the 10th Earl of Murray, a man who owned vast estates in the northeast and an awkwardly shaped small one in the heart of Edinburgh. The Murray feud sat between Edinburgh's New Town and the Dean, a valley that cuts through the centre of the city. In 1822, the Earl of Murray ordered the construction of this, the Murray Estate. It's a bit ambitious, with the centrepiece being the Earl's own residence. He clearly wasn't a total dafty, but he put the brothers up in his Highland estate from around 1829. He'd clearly fallen for their stick, and so had the Marquis of Bute and the 12th Lord Lovat. He built them a hunting lodge on Alien Agus, an island in the middle of the River Bewley that now may or may not be owned by the Qatari royal family. In the hunting lodge, they had all the gear: flags, custom-made furniture, stag's head, tartan, pretty much the stereotypical look you imagine, because they helped invent it. A report from the Times in 1836 said, They are good-looking men and are always attired in the Highland costume of the House of Stuart, and are accompanied by a piper of the clan. They have never worn any other dress than the kilt and its Highland appendages, and their seal is a crown. They also reported that the brothers were piped in when they arrived anywhere, and that they attended mass every Sunday and were rowed home by 8 oarsmen, complete with a royal standard.
What a life! But then they kinda rocked the boat.
In publishing Tales of the Century, they'd gone a bit too far. They were savaged as fantasists in an anonymous article, The Heirs of the Stuarts, thought to have been written by George Skene, an advocate and professor of law at Glasgow University.
The brothers obviously knew they'd had a good run. Their time was up, and they hightailed it to Prague, into a self-imposed exile that would last 20 years.
They returned to London in 1868 and lived out their days there. They were pretty unrepentant. The brothers could be seen around the British Museum, where they spent their time researching, still in full Highland dress or military uniform, using pens, letter knives and stationery decorated with those gold crowns. John styled himself as the Count of Albany, and when he died, Charles took on the title, and then his son did the same.
So what about the tartans they produced? Well, like I said in the beginning, all tartans are invented. In fact, clan tartans weren't even a thing until the early 19th century, when they were cooked up by a growing weaving industry. So if the Sobieski Stuarts came up with yours 20 years later, who cares? It came from some highly creative minds.